It's the Wall, Tyler Stevens, Mr. Big Bad and Pretty, and you're drinking at most.
This is Drinkin at Njpw, where we talk about the pros of pro wrestling in the Midwest while sipping on some brews with blessed beers and wrestling. That's my scene. Death matches and lucha libre, it's also mean. I'm a straight up smart goofball, not no kiss ass. I stand tall when it comes to wrestling. I'm the king. I know every move, every fling. Get ready for a wild time with Drinkin at Mo's, where we don't quit. Drinkin at Mo's, that's where it's at. Like a power bomb, we hit hard, never flat. Fucking right, we're living the dream. Talking about wrestling, always a scream.
All right, everybody, taking time out before we get this show started. I want to thank Reaper Apparel for having Drinkinatmos be a brand ambassador for their clothing line. They got good stuff. They got t-shirts, they got hoodies, they got beanies, they got lots of great stuff, encouraging everybody to break out of their comfort zone, live their best self, and hey, it's something I try to live every day. Now, be sure when you go and you're filling out your order, use the code drinkinatmos, get 10% off, and the link and the code will both be in the description. Let's fucking go. All right, everybody, welcome to Drinking at Mo's. Big Mo here. You know the drill. YouTube, like, subscribe, share, comment, all that good stuff. Helps with that pain in the ass YouTube algorithm. Yeah, this is still a pain in the ass all this time. And, don't forget about the audio platforms, too. Today, I'm excited to have with me Tyler Stevens. How you doing?
I'm good, dog. How you doing?
Oh, I can't complain too much. As of this recording, this week is a fun one. I have my 300th episode airing on Friday with Cheeseburger. So that was a fun one. And then the day after, I'm going to be going to a show for Sami Callihan's promotion Revolver. So that's going to be always a fun time. And we are officially in the month where my wife is going to get induced and we're going to have our little boy. So all in all, it's a pretty great month.
Yeah, very big, right?
Oh, yeah. It's becoming very real right now.
Yeah, ain't no it's not a fairy tale anymore. It's like, we're here.
Oh, yeah. No, like every time I go to, like, I have to get something from what's going to be his room. Like the first thing that just pops into my head is like, holy crap, here in like a month, there's going to be an actual person in here. It was just wild. But, first thing I'd like to talk with everybody about is what got you started as a fan, and then what got you deciding to make the leap into the business?
So, as far as being a fan goes, it's kind of been like a lifelong thing for me. So, like, even preceding me, so my granddad used to record like old Raws, Warren, WCW Nitro tapes with my older sister. So growing up, I didn't have cable at home or anything like that. Didn't have satellite, so I used to watch those tapes like on repeat.
Oh, yeah.
Kids my age wanted to be like Shawn and Triple H, and me, my brother wanted to be the New Age Outlaws.
Oh, yeah.
Just because that was just kind of like the stuff that we were seeing because we weren't up to date with the product or whatever.
Yeah.
And then like 2008 or 9, I realized, because we had like the bunny ears on my TV. I realized that we had SmackDown that we could watch on Fridays because it was on local syndicated television.
Oh, okay.
So that was my first time like actually keeping up with the product like week to week. And that was probably like 2008. It was right before Jeff went on that crazy like WWE title run and stuff like that, and then his feud with Punk and everything like that in 2008, 2009.
Okay. Yeah, hell, 2009, that would have been about the time that I was just enlisting in the Navy.
Yeah.
June of that year.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then getting into the business. So I worked at a warehouse. I worked at Sam's Club. I worked in a tire shop, and I hated my job and I hated the people I worked with. And I went home and I was watching Raw, and I was like, "This is a job. Like people get paid to do this. People get paid really well to do this. I want to do this." And I googled wrestling schools. I found high spots in North Carolina with George South, Caprice Coleman,
Mm,
and JD Drake. And I went. I watched a class with George. Went back the next week, gave him $500, started training.
nice. Yeah, I love hearing everybody's stories about how they initially get in because, I've had people that kind of like DDP, how he started off like in the ring kind of later, but then, end up having pretty good careers. And then
Yep.
I've had Billy Starks on that got like started crazy freaking young, and good Lord, look at everything she's already accomplished. So love hearing everybody's different stories. Now you mentioned about liking the New Age Outlaws. I mean, I think everybody had the whole, well, ladies and gentlemen, boys, that whole spiel
Yeah,
practically
for sure.
memorized. Now, did with going into the business, did you take influences from them, or like to explain to people that outside of your area, how did you come about with how you are out there in the ring?
So that has actually evolved and changed a lot over time. So like my my very first match, I had no idea any kind of like a semblance of like really a personality. I just knew that I was tall because I wasn't even really big at the time, but I was tall and I knew that I was supposed to act like I was big. And so that's what I did. I went out there and I did what I was told. And I tried my best to be that. But like they saw right through me. Like I walked through the curtain, I've got like brand new boots on. I got brand new tights on that like don't really fit. They were like meant for somebody who was overweight, and we just like tailored them to kind of fit me better. And some guys like, he looks like he just got out of high school. And I was like barely a year removed from high school. So of course I am at this point like trembling at the knees. You know what I mean? Because I'm like terrified because I'm like, they see right through me. It's done. It's a wrap. Wrap this up. It's time to go. Um, but like a lot of where I'm at now, like not necessarily inspiration from the Outlaws, but like from so like the late 2000s Undertaker, he
Mm,
was kind of leaning out and stuff like that. Like I watched a lot of that, watched a lot of Triple H, watched a lot of Test, watched a lot of Scott Hall, watched a
mm,
lot of Edge. Those were the guys who were like, those are a handful of the guys who have very heavily impacted like some of my work. And then the other thing is like I'm not a character like when I'm in the ring. I'm not like something that I'm not. Like these are real parts of my personality. Like I'm really kind of an asshole. I really kind of have to manhandle people sometimes because of things that I have to do outside of the world of wrestling. Like that is a part of my shoot job. Like that is what I do to and I get paid for it. Like so it's it's easier for me because I have things in the real world that I could draw from and real things that I've
mm,
experienced. Like I've had a firearm pulled on me. I've had like 40 men brawls break out at the club I work at. You know what I mean? So
mm.
like these are things I've experienced and I've seen. So it's easy for me to draw on when I'm out there. It's easy for me to talk my shit when I'm out there.
Oh, no, it's definitely something that the fans can definitely sense, that authenticity, where like some people that are just kind of trying to play into whatever it might be, but if they have those things to draw into, they're like, man, you get that sense that that they are that way outside of the ring, and in the ring too. It I know that those are the people I gravitate towards, and those intense personas that you're like, you just sense that realism with it, and they're not just playing a character. Now, the cool thing that drew us together here is a recent European tour, which I've I've sponsored one other person who we both know, Manhorn, or AKA Shiny Shoes, sponsored a recent one of his, and then you reached out, and I'm like, you know what? I haven't had him on to talk about the one he did, but I knew I had an opportunity to do that with you, and I wanted to jump on it. What was that tour like for you? For those, like I said, outside of your area that might not be as familiar with you, what was the tour like?
So I've been blessed enough to have been able to tour twice this year. So I did the WXW trip in January into February, and then I did this more recent tour, which you were so gracious to help me out with, and I really do appreciate that. In October, and that was primarily shows around the UK.
Okay.
It was very taxing sometimes because some of the ways that those shows were booked, um, the travel wasn't always the easiest just because I don't drive. But the experience was game changing. Going somewhere where people might have no idea who you are, they might not understand some of the lingo you use, stuff like that. Because I talk the way I talk because that's just I've always talked like that. So like I'll say something and I'll realize sometimes that like this is not the crowd that's going to understand the way I'm speaking right now. But going out there and showing through my body language and through what I'm doing in the ring and through my intentionality, uh, and getting across the way that I am through those things, along with the way that I speak and not necessarily losing that, um, was very gratifying for me. There was a lot of positive and negative reactions from that, as far as from the crowd. Um, I was able to meet a lot of people who I will hopefully be able to see again relatively soon, probably within the next year. Um, it was a very fruitful trip. It's just, it's difficult though too. Like
Yeah.
the like the WXW trip was 6 weeks, right?
Yeah.
That was almost too long because it's not a massive time difference. It's like 5 hours in Germany, 6 hours where I was at in England, but it's drastic enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's very hard when you can't be in touch with your people and stuff like that for an extended period of time. So like 3 weeks, 4 weeks is probably the sweet spot where you don't feel like you're so disconnected. Um, it makes me feel for guys who are going on like 3 month Japanese tours. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
can't imagine how difficult that is as far as like that side of it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Um, but from the wrestling side of it, it's like you you cannot beat experiences like that. And I'm a big purveyor of the school of thought that the best people in the world are always world traveled. Like if you look at any of the greatest of all time, they've been to Mexico, they've been to Japan, they've been to, all of these different territories throughout the United States and into Canada and things like that. And I think that it's very important for our craft.
Oh yeah.
Wrestling is a universal language, and there are certain like subsects of that language. And the more you understand about these different groupings and styles of wrestling, the better of a wrestler you're gonna be.
Oh yeah.
So
And it's like that here in the States, where like all sorts of different promotions and towns you go to, the promotion might have their show a little different than another. It's that same all over the planet. You get the places that have the strong style or the more high flying stuff. I know I gravitate towards more of the Japanese strong style. Like I know Tomohiro Ishii, one of my absolute favorites right now. Like they always say, you only have the one time to make a first impression. Well, the first impression I had of him was, hearing the bone on bone smack of a headbutt, and I'm like,
yeah,
I have a
it's like
headache now.
unsettling.
And it's always nice to you get that well-rounded aspect of when you're world traveled, going to England, Germany, Japan, Mexico, Canada. I feel like I'm about to sing that old Animaniac song right now with the, oh God. Okay. On to a new topic, kind of, before I get that song stuck in my head. But I remember seeing a video of you against one of the, I'm forgetting the name off the top of my head, but it was a Rev Pro star. And over in the UK, for like listeners and people that will watch this episode that, might not be as familiar with Rev Pro, that is like destination spot over there in the UK. And, like, independence over here, you got people that will travel out and everything. But, getting the nod to, go up against an established guy from a promotion as big as Rev Pro is, it's kind of a nod from, the people that, you're going there to be on their show.
Yeah, I was very lucky to get to put my hands on Samuel Hawks. Shout out Samuel Hawks. Follow him on Instagram. I don't think he has Twitter, but definitely follow him on Instagram. Um, he's definitely one of those guys that's like very like boom, boom, boom. You know what I mean? He's a guy you got to slow down. Just because when he gets going, he's going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Luckily, I specialize in slowing people down. But that was honestly one of my favorite matches over there. Him and Big Lou Nixon. Lou's doing a lot of
Yeah.
W right now. And me and him got to have a real solid fight in Newcastle. And I had a lot of fun with that one too.
Ooh,
So those were two matches that I was very, very excited about when I went over there.
Oh yeah, no, I would be too. I'm very familiar with Lou Nixon, and I know I've talked with him at one point about coming on, but figuring out the time difference and when it would work for me, especially with the kid on the way and trying to figure out all that, it just
it's definitely not easy. Like I said, a 5 to 6 hour time difference. Like a lot of people probably don't really think about it, especially because even like coast to coast, it's just a 3 hour difference. But like, it makes a really big impact. Like even if you have somebody like I'm on the East Coast, if you're somebody on the West Coast and you stay over there, consistent communication to a certain degree is going to be more difficult just because of that 3 hours. So 5 or 6 hours is that much harder.
Oh yeah, it's definitely something that I definitely had to learn on my deployment. Only really having phone contact whenever we went into a port, and it's be like, okay, like I literally had my cell phone with me that obviously it didn't work in a lot of the foreign places, but I literally kept it on I didn't switch the time on it. So like I kept it on San Diego time where I was stationed. So that way I could be like, okay, it's this time. So it'd be this time there. So like, oh, they'd be up.
That's smart. I never even thought about that.
Yeah, I don't even know how I ended up thinking about it, but I'm like, I didn't want to end up waking them up at like 1 a.m. Although I think I ended up doing that one time. We figured out a way to dial out from our, shipboard phones that go to the different stations. And it was like Christmas or New Year's. And somebody was like, hey, you want to? I'm like, I can do that right now. So then I called, and I think it took my dad like 5-10 seconds to be like, wait, who was this? And then he recognized me, and it was like, oh, and I'm like, oh, dude, okay. But yeah, no, the time difference does make communication with, like you had mentioned, with your people back home that you care about, not so easy.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to enjoy the places where you're at, and not everybody gets to travel to the UK. Like I know that's one place I want to go but haven't been to yet. So people that get to, you want to enjoy that. You
Yeah.
don't want to be spending your whole time over there worrying, although sometimes it's a little easier said than done. Lord knows I've been guilty of that myself.
Yeah.
But you mentioned some of the travel stuff not being the easiest. You got any stories from the traveling aspect of it? Because I can imagine with the not driving, that makes one aspect of it not so easy. Like, how did that all work out for you?
So, in general, on like a day-to-day type of basis, especially not having to make it to a show, like if it's like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever it might be, public transit is like super accessible over there. Their infrastructure is like significantly more established, especially than anywhere like in the Southeast. The only places I can think of that might have something kind of comparable are like New York.
Mm.
Just as far as like how integral kind of the trains and buses and stuff like that are to the local economy.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and it's like that throughout a lot of Europe from what I've seen. Um, but like there was a stretch in the second week where we went from, so I was staying in Birmingham when I first got there. We went from Birmingham to Venice. We were in Venice for 2 days, came back from Venice. We flew out of, I think we flew into London. So we had to go from London back to Birmingham to get a rental car to drive from Birmingham to Newcastle. Drove from Newcastle back to Birmingham that night and boarded a plane at 6 Sunday morning to fly to Amsterdam because I had a show in Holland that
Mm.
next day. Um, wrestled the show in Holland, drove 2 hours back to where we were staying in Amsterdam, was in Amsterdam for 2 days, flew back to flew back to London again, I think, and then went from London to where we would end up staying, which was in Reading.
Okay.
So
That's quite a bit of travel right there.
yeah, that like Friday, Saturday, Sunday stretch was horrible. It
Yeah.
was horrible. The shows were great. I had a lot of fun. That was the weekend, so I got to wrestle Lou that Saturday in Newcastle, and then I got to wrestle a dude named Pipa Gigante, I think is how you say his name. Dude's massive. He's like 6'10", like 300 something pounds. Real big dude. But I got to wrestle him the next day, which was a lot of fun because I like working with big guys. I like being able to beat up on big guys.
Yeah.
Because they think I can't throw them around and then I do it. Uh, so that's always fun. But yeah, it was not the best planned loop of shows. So, but part of that is on me just because I should have looked into some of it more before accepting certain dates.
Mm.
But that goes back to it. Like if once you're committed to a show, I'm a firm believer that you should follow through on that show, unless there's just absolutely like life altering situations. Like I'm not one to cancel on my obligations if I don't have to. So
Oh yeah. No, I'm the same with you know recording the podcast. Like, if I don't have to, I tend to not reschedule it on my end.
yeah,
I mean, certain stuff happens on, the guest end, or I have had time. There was one time where I ended up in the middle of something. Wife ended up coming down to tell me something was wrong with one of our dogs.
yeah,
And I'm like, I just remember looking at the guest I had on at the time. I'm like, because I had paused the recording, I'm like, I think I need to go because
yeah.
just the look on my wife's face, I'm like, oh, this, I'm not
Yeah,
getting
this is
good
not
feeling.
good.
This is not good.
Yeah,
So stuff like that happens. I mean, unfortunately, but you know, I try to keep all the scheduling down because you know I know on my end, I I don't want people to think that I'm just, you know, brushing them off or some wild thought like that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Lord knows I've had it happen to me.
Yeah.
I don't want to make people think the way I did when, let's say somebody I had a schedule for just, like I checked in with you this last weekend.
Yeah.
I had people that I just didn't hear from. And then go the day of, and it's like, well, shit. Okay.
Yeah, like this kind of sucks. Like hopefully this goes well.
Yeah. And like, I always try to be like, well, I hope everything's okay. But, shit happens. But you did mention, back on the European tour, there are some return plans. You said sometime next year. No concrete dates or anything planned just yet?
No, not quite. I'm trying to get through the beginning of 2025. I've got a lot of stuff coming up, specifically with New South and
Mm.
Action over the next couple months. I'm in two different tournaments coming up into the new year, so I'm trying to prepare my head for those and kind of
Ah,
see where those things go. It'll probably be third quarter of 2025.
okay.
Probably sometime a little after my birthday, uh, which is in August, so probably September, October, something like that.
Mm.
Probably a similar time frame.
Probably similar time frame to this last time. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I just
I
gotta, like I said, just kind of working out the details of what that looks like. You know what I mean?
okay. And
And then
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, trying to be more conscious of some of the booking decisions
Yeah.
that I take, just as far as the travel, just to try to alleviate some of that stress.
No, I can get you there. People that more from attitude era sort of stuff mention sometimes crazy travel. So I can imagine independent wise, yeah, you want to stay busy, but if you have the opportunity where you can have maybe a, not so much a big break, but just a little bit, to kind of let yourself recover, especially from tournaments and stuff where you're going to be in there more than once, and allowing your body to recover so you don't uh, worry about injuries. Like, injuries are going to happen, but you minimize it, I guess, is the point I was trying to make there.
Yeah, trying to, and that's something that, especially the last like 2 years, I've become significantly busier in the last 2 years, and there's been a lot of growth as far as that goes, and I've been very grateful for that, and grateful for the opportunity to show what I do. Um, with that comes the fact that I'm trying to be more conscious of the taking care of my body and stuff like that, especially because everything that I do outside of wrestling is also fairly physical. So like cheap plug, I'm a personal trainer. So if you're in the Atlanta area, let me know. But between that and then the security job and stuff like that, I'm always doing something. So, stretching, making sure that I'm sleeping enough, those kind of things are a game changer. It's harder to do the things that you do well if you're not treating yourself right. So,
Yeah, that is one part of, I imagine, keeping yourself in ring shape, because there's stuff outside of in ring training that you gotta keep in mind, because making sure you're stretched, making sure you're resting when you can, everything that you brought up all compacts into one thing. So being sure to keep that in mind. And some of the places I'm actually familiar with, you brought up Action Wrestling and New South. I have been blessed, especially New South, to have quite a few people from there come on, and including Carmen Michael. He was amazing. Loved having him on. And Action Wrestling, those two places are definitely, when you think of independence in the Southeast, they're definitely two of a handful of like destination spots because, I know, you know, being lucky enough to have, some of the streaming services that have independent wrestling on, like, Triller TV or IWTV, they they definitely open your eyes to a lot of the independent wrestling out there outside of like my area here in Omaha, Nebraska. Like I'm getting to see from all over the place. And those two have definitely jumped out to me, and talking about some of the stuff that you got going on there. You mentioned a couple tournaments. Is there stuff that you can talk about right now that, this episode will probably be airing after the first of the year? What do you got going on there that you can talk about right now?
Um, I'm not 100% sure that I can talk about this, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I'm better at asking for forgiveness than permission.
That happens sometimes.
I've got my eyes set on the Hoss tournament at
I
New
was
South.
I was gonna
Um,
say, I was gonna ask when you mentioned tournaments, I was gonna ask about that one.
so that's one of two tournaments that I'm involved in. I've got another tournament in the greater Georgia area, and I really hate that I'm trying to plug it and I can't remember the name, but
It happens.
it's but those are two tournaments that I'm gonna be involved in this year. Good Hand is still gonna be trying to wreck at action. That's not gonna change until we get all the straps back. We need that world title back, so it is what it is. I've got my eyes set on anybody who's ahead of me, whether that's Action, New South, TWE, out of state, doesn't matter. Naptown is going to be a home of mine this coming year, in Indiana. So I'm just trying to get out and let as many people see what I do as possible. Um,
Hey, get you out here.
yeah, I would love to. So
I
it's
can
that's
point a few
the
people your direction.
sick. Yeah, let me know. Yeah, I'm just trying to go as many places as possible, wrestle as many people as I can.
Hey, that is awesome. And I know you brought up TWE. Now, that is another spot that, I know for me as a fan, I remember the first time I saw that arena, a show there on, I believe it was IWTV, but I believe it was a ICW no holds barred, pit fighter show with a
Yeah,
cage surrounding it. I'm like, it looked like definitely a smaller, more intimate sort of venue, but just the energy I could sense from that crowd and from any show at the TWE arena that I've seen, it's just like every time I watch it, I'm like, I want to go to a show there because that just looks like fun.
I think the biggest thing from the locker room perspective of being at TWE is the fact that all of those guys are trying to get better. So you've got cats like Big Dave, who I've been to war with a couple different times. You've got guys like my good hand brother Casey Owens, who is getting better week by week, every single week. Every time I see him, he's got new. I call him a mad scientist because he's always studying tape. He's always making things old new again. Severely underrated in the Southeast right now, and I think people are going to start seeing that. You got guys like Darian Bankston, who's I don't agree with him, and I got him in my sights, but he's a genius when it comes to the technical side of professional wrestling. Like, and anybody that says otherwise is just ignorant. You've got guys like Shug D, who when he comes in, like that's like a big brother to me. You've got guys like Derek Neal, who's a super classic kind of like real Hall like Haas brawler heavyweight. Um, and you've got so many guys in between. Like I haven't even talked about Coven and the Goat with Jaden Newman and Tank and Rev.
Mm.
I haven't talked about KOBK. There's so much talent in that building on any given week, and there's so many people to learn from. and there's so many people that have different styles, and I think that that makes matches.
Mm-hmm.
Like that goes back to like that Sam Hawks match I had overseas.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite matches because we are completely different kinds of wrestlers. And I always think that those are the most fun. So like I cannot put over TWE enough as far as the impact that it has on the guys that are there. Like that
Oh,
that's a locker room that wants it.
no, for sure. I know I've definitely got that sense, from, I think there's like one, maybe two members of Covenant of the Goat that I haven't had on yet, but I'm in the works of trying. KOBK, I just had Mose. I recorded with him not all that long, like a week or two ago. And oh god, that was a fun one. And I do have to agree with you on, you know, places that have those mixes of styles, because those matches do, like, when you get a match that has both participants and there's just that words are hard. There's that difference in styles that, how they end up coming together. Just for me as a fan, I love watching that. All right. So I have two categories here. And first one's a bit of a name game where I try to name off some people. You give me quick thoughts on them. And I try to theme it towards the guests as much as possible. And, each of these people are some Georgia boys. So that's going to be the theme to this. Two of them currently out there going today. Two of them maybe a little more from when I got started watching wrestling, but I feel like most people know who these guys are, especially being from that area.
Yeah.
All right. First one. I don't think too many people don't know this guy. The American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes.
He's the hottest. He's the hottest good guy in the world right now. He's the epitome of bet on yourself. In a lot of ways, like he
Oh, yeah.
literally he left the only game in town, started the second biggest game in town, and then went back to the first biggest game in town. Uh, all completely on his own terms. Um, he's doing everything that he wants to and thinks he deserves to in this business. Um, and he likes vodka, so I can co-sign that.
Yeah. I mean, the vodka part, I mm, I I'm okay with it, but as far as liquors go, I'm more of a whiskey tequila guy myself.
Yeah,
But hey, to each their own. That's why, everybody has their own taste, much like in wrestling. Not everybody's going to like the same thing. So it's all good. All right. But I do have to say, want I want to meet Cody Rhodes pretty bad, because I remember watching that documentary that they released on him. And it got to the point where he was talking about when his father was passing away, and talking about how, it's not like it is in, the movies or TV where, they make it seem like it goes by quick.
yeah,
I know, reason I have this tattoo on my forearm, my wife and I were pregnant with twin girls, born premature, only made it about a week. And much like he was talking about in the documentary about, kind of like practically memorizing the floor plan, and, being in and out of there so much you can just memorize stuff about everything going on around. It's like, holy crap, for that entire week I was I
yeah,
was the embodiment of that. Like, I went back to work because I was like, I'm saving my PTO for when these girls come home. So
yeah,
like, I went from work come home, check on the dogs and my wife, spend a chunk of the night at the hospital, come back home, go to sleep, do it all over again the next day. So getting to talk to him about how that part kind of spoke to me would be like something that like bucket list material, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
All right. Next up, a guy that I've had the pleasure of meeting one time. He's the phenomenal one, AJ Styles.
So, first and foremost, obviously, everything he did before WWE is obviously fantastic, and it's also insane to me that he has been in the WWE longer than he was at any of the other places.
That does seem kind of crazy when you think
Yeah,
about
it just doesn't like feel right in my brain, but that's statistically what it is.
it. Yeah.
But also like when I think of AJ Styles, I think of the Landmark Arena.
Mm.
So anybody who knows anything about the history of like Georgia wrestling, the Landmark Arena is a who's who of so many people have been there. You know, AJ, Slim J, Caprice Coleman, the list goes like Xavier Woods, Austin Theory, like a who's who of talent have been through the walls of the Landmark Arena, and I was blessed enough to get a lot of my early work in the state in that arena, working with guys who were at Wildside,
Mm.
um, and so just for the sake of the fact that that was a house that he built, I would like if I ever had the opportunity to, I would thank him because without that home of Southern wrestling, I would not have been able to start to progress in the way that I did.
Mm.
So that's a personal note from me as far as like my history and how it kind of intertwines with his a little bit.
Oh yeah, no, that's definitely an awesome thing, and I hope you get to accomplish it. Now, and when I got to meet him, it was actually when he was in between TNA and he did that stint in New Japan. He
Yep.
did some independents in between there, and one of them was up here in Omaha. So I got to meet him. I got a TNA lockdown DVD cover signed by him, and I specifically mentioned that him telling me, "Man, I hated those matches," and we both got a pretty good laugh out of it. So good memory I have of him. All right, now next guy I have up here. I don't know why. I guess I, for some reason, thought more of North Carolina with him, but I found him listed in Georgia, and I mean it makes sense with WCW having been based in Atlanta, and one of the founding members of the Four Horsemen, Arn Anderson.
Arn Anderson was a bad guy's bad guy in any generation. Like if he didn't want you to like him, you weren't gonna like. You weren't gonna find anything redeemable about him, and he was very meticulous in the way that he did that. He is a great example of a body type that people try to shame in certain parts of the wrestling community, and I don't understand it because if I saw him in a bar fight, I would help the other guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's just he looks like a grown man that can and will put his hands on you.
Oh yeah.
And just from a psychology perspective, I mean, him and then obviously, his tag team psychology is some of the best that's ever happened. Like
Oh
you
yeah.
you can still study his matches today and learn something new if you know what you're looking at.
Oh yeah. No, definitely.
One of the best tag team wrestlers of all time. And then obviously uh WCW is always going to hold a special place in my heart too, just because of the tapes and stuff I used to watch. So that's
No, I get you there. And one thing that I will always remember about, some of the promos, especially back in, the WCW days, is he had this way of conveying intensity without having to come across like he's yelling.
Yep.
Like you could just sense that he was oozing intensity without going to that level. And not too many people have as good of an ability to do it like he did.
Yep.
And good lord, one of the cleanest looking spine busters you'll ever see
Well, I mean, yeah, that's why they
comes
still
from
call
him.
it a double A spine buster.
Yeah.
There's he he earned it.
Oh,
He
that he
definitely
did.
earned it.
That he did. All right. Last but not least here. Growing up, this guy was one of my absolute favorites. Funny enough, when I went to my first ever WWE show when I was like in, good lord, third grade, the first piece of WWE merch that I ever got from a show was one of the foam nightsticks. I'm talking about a Big Boss Man, Ray Trailer.
So I actually until I became a wrestler and started really trying to study the craft of professional wrestling, I was not as familiar with him as maybe I should have been. Um, I like as a kid, I remembered him because of the gimmick with Undertaker where he got hung.
Oh yeah, back when he had
So
the kind of tactical gear,
yeah,
Big
exactly.
Boss Man. Yeah.
That's like the era of Big Boss Man that I was the most familiar with.
Mm.
But getting to go back and kind of see the way he moved for a guy his size, uh, is still super impressive to me because I
Oh yeah.
know plenty of guys who look like him that cannot move like him. Um, Definitely underrated, I think, in the
Oh yeah.
current like
Totally.
landscape of big guys throughout the history of wrestling.
Oh yeah.
And I think part of that is just like it's easy. It's hard to like it's very hard to watch everything all the time.
Yeah. It definitely
Like
can be.
whether you're trying to keep up with like the current stuff or you're trying to watch the old stuff, like it's like how old do you go? Like
Yeah.
what are you looking for? You know what I mean? And then you've got all of the lucha libre stuff out of Mexico. You've got all of the like the catch as catch can stuff out of the British scene, the world of sport scene, and then you've got the strong style stuff coming out of Japan and Kings Road and stuff like that. So it's very difficult to 100% know what you should be watching at any given time.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe he's kind of a victim of that a little bit, especially because wrestling from all over the world is the most accessible that it's ever been. Um, but also because of that, hopefully after somebody listens to this, they will go and look up some of his stuff because he, like I said, mad underrated for a big guy.
Oh yeah. Like I said, one of my personal favorite characters, and actually, I got some of his stuff behind me here. Some of my collections, I keep most of it in the box, but for like people that have passed on that I'm obviously not gonna be able to meet, like I got some stuff behind me here. I got one of Big Boss Man's figures. I even found this Funko Pop.
That's it.
And speaking of big guys, some of the guys that I have right next to him, two other, uh, in my opinion, two of the other great big men in the history of the business, Bam Bam Bigelow and Vader.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
dude, Bam Bam Bigelow. I remember growing up and seeing the flame tattoos on his head, and I'm like, dude, I don't know whether I should be scared out of my damn mind, but just watching him, it was just captivating.
That's two more guys who like deceivingly athletic for their size.
Oh,
Um,
totally.
and then like guys like Vader, like would just like he could just go in there and slug it out with you if that's what you wanted to do. And I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
So um yeah, two guys that obviously all time greats for a reason, right?
Oh, yeah. Totally. All right. Now I got some random questions. Some might be wrestling related, some not. They all man, pretty much got nothing to do with anything we've talked about so far.
Okay.
So I give you the question, first answer that pops into your head. First one, craziest in match moment for you.
In match,
Yeah.
um, I think I probably O'Shea Edwards, like just throwing me around.
Hmm.
Because by that point I was like easily 245, 250. And I'm not, especially on the indies, not used to getting thrown around like that. And O'Shea way too easy for my taste. I just remember being upside down and like being able to count the lights in the ceiling. I'm like, well, this sucks. And then getting up and getting thrown again. So that's
Oh
probably the
boy.
craziest moment, like mid match.
Oh yeah, I that would definitely fit. I love having that question in here because some of the stories like that I hear. I know I've had people from the original ECW that one guy told me about a match with New Jack where the owner of the venue and I believe Paul Heyman actually told them to be careful with the venue. And then they both proceed to end up going through a wall. And then Paul Heyman screaming at them after the match. Or a guy getting stabbed in the ass by an old lady. Or a guy going to Puerto Rico and wearing a shirt that said in English and in Spanish, "Justice for Brody." I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah,
Like, anybody that knows the whole situation with that knows that, yeah, when they,
that's bold. Definitely bold.
oh God. And he legit told me that the promoter had told him later on that he had a guy call him saying that if he ever brought that guy back, he wasn't making it home. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds about like what I've nothing against the fans in Puerto Rico. They are definitely a passionate bunch, but that sounds right up there with some of the crazy stories I've heard coming out of the fans there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Now you mentioned being over in the UK. I haven't been able to be there to test out this theory, although I've had people tell me that they don't believe it. I've heard about the UK food not being the best. Your opinion, good or nah?
I mean, so like I think the biggest issue with that is like what what group of food do they mean by that? And the reason that I say that is there's a lot of immigration throughout Europe, and like Western Asian countries. So
Yeah,
like there's a lot of Turkish food, which I think is really, really good. There's a lot of like I can't count how many German doners I ate while I was overseas because I love them. They're delicious. Um, like maybe if they're trying to say that like certain traditional English dishes are not the tastiest, like maybe, I guess. I
yeah,
never I never had an issue with anything that I was eating being particularly bad. Like like there might have been one or two meals where I was like, maybe I'll season it a little bit more. You know what I mean? But like there
yeah,
was for me the issue with that question is it just kind of goes back to the fact that like there are so many different kinds of food.
that
Um
yeah,
and so having that kind of variety is really cool because there's certain types of foods that we just don't get in the same way here.
yeah,
Like eating Indian food in the UK was very different than eating Indian food from most like Americanized spots.
huh?
So just because it was a little bit truer to
Mm.
the palate and things like that. So I had really great culinary experiences. I had some culinary experiences, but I wouldn't say I had any bad culinary experiences.
Okay, good to know. But yeah, it seems like there's a lot of places out there that you can go to that they do have that melting pot sort of feeling where there's just so many different varieties of people out there bringing their culinary uh, tastes from their backgrounds. So it's like, if you're not a picky eater like myself, you're probably going to find something you like. All right. Now, I kind of hinted at what would be my answer to this, but as of recording, we are not too far away from Christmas. What is the best Christmas gift you remember getting growing up?
Um,
It can be tricky sometimes trying to remember, sometimes how far back you got to go.
I don't think there was ever like a particular gift that I was ever like. I think my favorite part of the Christmas season growing up was so my mama lives in Germany. I'm like a quarter German. My mom's half German. We used to get advent calendars every
Mm.
year from Germany, like with German chocolate in them and stuff like that.
Ooh,
She would send over like a care package every December, and it'd be like advent calendars and candy,
nice.
like stuff like that. So that was always like the thing I was the most excited about because I never
No.
knew what like from my list I was gonna get. And then like we didn't have like bad Christmases, but like I more so enjoyed like the cooking and the like the not being at school and like
Yeah,
you know
growing
what
up,
I
yeah,
mean. So
yeah.
like one year I think it was a bike was my favorite. One year I got a Nintendo DS from my dad, which was pretty cool. Um, because I had a lot of memories based around those things. Like I had a lot of memories of like playing games on DSs with my friends and stuff like that, or like riding my bike to and from school and stuff like that. But I think the advent calendars were always like the coolest thing to me, just because I knew that every day for a month I got a piece of chocolate, and
Yeah.
anybody that knows me knows that I love chocolate. So yeah, I think advent calendars, which feels like a really like weird answer, but
No, I can get it. One of those kind of simple pleasures. You every day during that time you're getting that piece of chocolate out of there, and that little simple treat can sometimes mean mean a lot. You know,
yeah,
because sometimes a lot of people during the time they get it can be a bit materialistic sometimes with some stuff. So when you're able to have something that gives you that simple pleasure, it's always nice.
yeah,
I know. Oh God, I'm trying to, but I think a lot of it was get for me getting to see some of the relatives that I didn't get to see all that often were some of the simple pleasures for me because
yeah.
for me they live on, or at the time anyways, lived on like the completely other side of the state from me. So it was always a bit of a trip.
Yeah.
So, but I do remember specifically that same show where I got that foam nightstick from the Big Boss Man. That was legit my first ever WWE show, first ever pro wrestling show in general. And I got the ticket from my dad for Christmas, and it was like floor seats, maybe not even 10 rows from the ring, maybe a few
Yeah, he went all out.
maybe a few seats over from the entrance, and I'm getting to see guys like the head shrinkers, Rikishi as head shrinker Fatu coming by me. Um, the Big Boss Man's match that night was actually against Yokozuna. So like I'm a little
Yeah.
third grader and I'm seeing those huge ass guys walking by me and I'm like, holy moly.
Yeah.
So just one of those memories like that just definitely stick out in my mind of it. But getting to share that with my dad, who I think he would openly admit it, not then, still not now, the biggest pro wrestling fan, but getting to share that with me and me getting to share it with him was just something I'm going to carry with me.
Yeah.
All right. Now, mentioned, like you said, we talked a lot about the European tour. Is there anywhere that you haven't been to yet to wrestle that you're like, okay, I like a bucket list spot that like I want to go there?
Japan.
Japan. I was gonna say I would not be surprised if that was the answer.
Yeah, Japan, easy. I'd love to wrestle in like Mexico, or I'd love to do because they still do like the wrestling, like the holiday camps in the UK.
Mm.
Like I know like Brian Danielson got a lot of reps out of there and stuff like that. And I think doing one of those camps would be great because you're working like multiple shows a day every day for like a week or 2 weeks. Um, but like Japan is just that's the I think anyone who like appreciates the history of wrestling would want to wrestle there at least once.
Oh yeah.
Um, so it's just like I don't really know how to describe it, but it just feels like a must do.
Oh yeah. I would like to think that even the people that might get to a place like in an AEW or a WWE that more so WWE right now, that they'll do those little tours over there. Even for people like that maybe got to that point before going over to Japan, I would like to think that they even them would be like, man, I'm keeping my eye on when that Japan tour comes up because I want to make sure I am healthy for that.
Yeah.
I would have to say so. All right. Now, I like to ask everybody favorite drink, whether alcoholic or otherwise, because I mean, it's drinking at Moe's. I feel like I have to have it on
Um, I don't know about favorite drink, but my favorite beer is Guinness.
there. Guinness. Okay.
I've always liked like I drink my coffee black. Like I just have always kind of liked like more bitter kind of drinks. Guinness is like the perfect beer for me. I got to the first time I ever traveled overseas as an adult, I got stuck in like an 8 hour layover in Dublin, and the Burger King at the Dublin airport sells Guinness. So I was able to have a Guinness in Ireland while I was eating a double cheeseburger, which I thought was sick. Um, it made me much more thoroughly enjoy my layover.
I imagine.
But if I'm not drinking Guinness and I'm drinking something with liquor in it, it's usually like a rum and coke.
Okay.
Um, or like if I'm doing shots, it might be like some kind of vodka if I intend on drinking a bit. But one thing in recent years is that I don't drink nearly as much as I used to, so I might drink once every like couple weeks.
No, I'm definitely the same. Like I've had my times where I've drank quite a bit. I mean, shit, a lot of my deployment in ports were like that. Were like, I don't know if they still do it, but at the time they were saying they were testing it out to where like foreign ports they would breathalyze you when you got back.
Oh wow.
And if you didn't pass, you didn't get out the next port. And I remember one time in Bahrain, I had been going pitcher for pitcher with British Navy. And let's just say I was fucking hammered by the end of the night. And the group I was with, thank God, when we got there, we were like at the very back of the line. Like there was like a long ass line waiting to go through. And they literally looked at me and they're like, dude, just go. We'll sign you back in. So I was like, okay, got away with that one. I'm like, anymore now? Like, I mean, yeah, I had my one while we were sitting here, but I might go a few days before I have another one. It's like
Yeah.
I'm more of a social drinker whenever I do. Like
Yeah.
don't I don't like drinking by myself.
Yeah.
Here with the podcast recording with you, I'm like, well, I'm not technically by myself. So,
Yeah, for sure. You're like having a fun conversation.
oh yeah, that's the way. That's the flow I like to have with this. Yeah, I have my notes here, but I like to just keep it like two buddies at a bar sharing stories over some beers.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, now last but not least, here, best advice you have for anybody wanting to get into wrestling.
Uh, my best advice is don't take advice from me. um, no, if you're gonna get into wrestling and you're serious about like wanting to be a professional wrestler and when I say take it seriously, I don't mean like you have to want to make a career out of it or anything like that. Not everybody wants to do that. Some people are happy being a weekend warrior and stuff like that, and that's fine. If you want to get into wrestling because it is fun to you and that's a hobby you want to have, that's cool. Um, it's not for me. Uh, I'm going to make a living out of this one day, but it's not for me. But by taking it seriously, I just mean like get trained properly. Have somebody who's going to teach you the fundamentals. Um, don't just like start wrestling in your backyard with your friends and not expect somebody to get hurt. Because there's a reason that we get trained to do what we do. Um, Train consistently, train often, train like you are at Showtime because you practice how you play. Um, don't be a dick. Just, show care and compassion for others and show care and compassion for yourself. Get trained properly. Just don't be a dickhead. Like those are the biggest things. Like just don't be a dick. I'm not saying you're not going to do dickish things. It happens. We all get wrapped up in our own lives and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Apologize and move on.
Mm-hmm.
Be
No,
accountable
definitely.
for whatever you do and move on.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
Other than that, just like enjoy the ride. Like if you're already here and you're doing the thing, like just enjoy the ride, dude. Because all we can do is control what we do, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if I'm doing my best to, you know, whether it's work or training or shows or more work or family stuff or whatever it is, try to find a balance that works for you. Make sure you're having fun. Wrestling's supposed to be fun. It's a
Mm-hmm.
business, but it's also like it's a pretty magical fucking business. Um, and we're all lucky to get to be a part of it. So
Oh,
just don't lose that gratitude.
oh yeah, and a lot of it, yeah. Don't be a dick. That can be advice that can be applied pretty much anywhere, really.
Yeah, that's
And
that's just like life advice. Just don't be a dickhead.
oh yeah, and then making sure to enjoy it while you're in it. Also, I mean, that could also be life advice, but it came up to me because I had seen two different interviews, one with the Undertaker and one with John Cena, where they talked about John Cena right now. He talked about how you see him in his entrance and he'll like take that moment to just like look around, really taking it in because he talked about he knows that his days actively in the ring are they're numbered. He's doesn't have that much time left. So, taking that time to sit back and enjoy it. Undertaker, I remember I was watching a thing where he was talking over one of the casket matches he had with Yokozuna, and he mentioned about, wishing that he had done stuff like that more, just enjoying the moments because, you know, Yokozuna, one of his really good friends, no longer with us, God rest his soul. But taking those moments with your friends, you're in there, you're sharing the ring with, and being able to enjoy it because you never know when that's going to be the last time you got that.
And don't get me wrong, like it wrestling is a business where it is absolutely about what have you done lately. You're only as good as your next match. Um, like I've got some really big opportunities coming up just this month within New South and within TWE and stuff like that. But I'm already thinking about like Mania week for next year. You know what I mean? And that's just
Yeah.
because that's the nature of our business is it's always like setting goals and setting timelines for things and trying to make sure you execute on those things.
Oh yeah.
Um and like, with that and with being goal oriented and being driven to be successful, you are going to have disappointments and stuff like that. So that's why I try to stress that to other people because it's also a reminder to myself um, that it is okay to just enjoy the process. Because if you don't love the process, you're not going to be happy getting to the next point either. You know
Oh
what I
yeah.
mean? Um, you're not going to be able to fully appreciate where you are. So,
Most definitely. Yeah, I know. Hell, with even the podcast, always having goals. Like I know when I started off with wrestlers that I knew that were here local to me, and then I just remember thinking, I'm gonna run out of people here sooner or later, and I'm having too much fun with this. So then I started reaching out to, the guys that invented the Spanish Fly, the SATs. I had them on, and then it just kind of snowballed. And then I've had, like you mentioned, Carmen Michael. I've had a former Ring of Honor 6-man tag champ Dutch. I've had, good lord, a bunch of my. I'm a fan of the deathmatch hardcore style. A bunch of the people that I would consider on my Mount Rushmore, as silly as of a thing as that can be, I've had on. I've had John Wayne Murdoch on twice. I've had Alex Colon. I've had Ricky Shane Page. I've had Madman Pondo. Like, who's who of that style of wrestling? And
yeah,
I,
absolutely.
I,
Innovators.
I just think to myself, like, if I would have told me growing up in like middle school and high school that someday I'd be doing something like that, I would have told me that I was full of shit. But here I am, I'm getting to do it. I'm having fun. So definitely sitting back and being able to enjoy those moments because, yeah, you're going to run into stuff that I remember having the conversation with somebody recently that, you know what, there's days I love the pro wrestling business, and then there's days I just fucking hate it because, some of the drama and stuff that, wherever it might be that, I unintentionally walk in on. And it's like,
Yeah.
hey, okay, I'm going to back away over here. But
Yeah.
all right. Before we go, where can people find you social media wise? So if they don't already have their eyes on you, they can go ahead and get them there.
Pretty much all my social media is Tyler Stevens Pro. So that's Twitter, or I'm sorry, X, that's Instagram, that's YouTube, that's TikTok, that's I don't think I made the Blue Sky thing yet.
I
Whatever
haven't
that
yet.
gimmick is, I don't know anything about it. I made a Threads, which is also Tyler Stevens Pro, but it's literally just all my stuff from Instagram because I don't think anybody's on Threads. Um,
Yeah, I see. It's weird. It's weird to me, but yeah, I get you there.
but yeah, I'm trying to just be everywhere, so I probably will end up doing the Blue Sky gimmick just because it's a talking point right now. So maybe I can get some traction over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty much all my social media is YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, X, Threads, et
Bro.
cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is all Tyler Stevens, bro.
All right. We'll get all of that in the description. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me tonight. Best of luck out there, New South TWE, and best of luck on making 2025 one hell of a big year for yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. The fucking thing with the fucking button. Here we go again.